Hey guys, welcome back to episode 4 of The Last Stop with us, the Butterfly Effect podcast. So I'm here with Jack as always. Jack's just completed chapter 4 for everyone. So as always, I'm just going to ask you, what did you think?
I suppose the first thing I'll go into is the lengths of each character. We've just been discussing it ourselves. Mina's chapter, ridiculously short. It was like 5 minutes long for me. Not much longer for Donna, maybe just shy of 10 minutes. And then John's chapter was more in the sort of 15 to 20 minute range. And I was saying in the last episode how I feel like John's chapter gets more love, and this is just backing up that point altogether. As far as how the stories are going, I really like the order in which I'm playing this, because playing John's chapter last, I finished on a high, and I'd say that within these three, there are certainly, in terms of John's chapter, it's the best chapter that I've played in the game so far, for me personally. The other two, not really. But so yeah, like I finished chapter 4's on a positive note.
Yeah, definitely. So we were just talking before about the length of this episode. Usually the first one's ranged around an hour long, maybe a bit shy of that, around 50 minutes. The last one we covered, episode 3, came to about 40 minutes, I believe, or 45. This one, so I'm looking at, I'm going to name drop him, Gabe Hype's video on YouTube here, just to see his timestamps. He's done an uncut video, and it's 33 minutes long, so he completed the whole thing in just over half an hour. I'm looking at the timestamps here. John's chapter is about 15 minutes long. Mina's is about 7, and then Donna gets the rest. So that's, maybe just above 10 minutes or something. Not a very long chapter either. I don't know what you make of that, if you feel robbed about that.
Again, it's very jarring and very surprising that you sort of think, well, the effort being put into these stories, if not for the gameplay itself, but when they've sort of finished the game, like maybe they could divvy up these stories a bit better so that it's a bit more balanced throughout in terms of each story. Because you're sort of getting into it, and then bang, it sort of like goes to black screen, and you get an achievement. You're like, oh wow, like that's done already. Like, yeah, it's a bit.
I haven't made it yet, but it made me think of that meme where you've got the mum with the favorite children, where she's holding one up, who's like her favorite one, and it's almost like that's John. And then you've got like Donna just kind of head above water a little bit, and then you've just got Mina at the bottom, who's this corpse just like at the bottom of the sea. Like, it strongly feels like that, doesn't it? We were talking about the favoritisms and almost how they have their favorites, and we were talking about that in the quality of the writing and the story almost. But it's like it's almost gone that way with time now, hasn't it? Like, it almost felt like they didn't even try with Mina in that one.
Definitely. And it's funny, like, how each time I come back to and we like discussing the previous one, the orders, they keep, moving around. There's not really any sort of consistency throughout. Like you say, as far as the story and as far as the satisfaction you get from like the length of which you're playing as well.
Yeah, definitely. So, obviously, the order you're playing it in is Mina, Donna, John. For myself, when I did it, I actually went John, Mina, Donna. I just did it left to right. I guess I just sort of assumed that's how they'd want us to play it, chronologically in terms of, the ordering. Usually I just go left to right. But yeah, I get why you get a kick out of having John last. Definitely end it on a high note. Starting with John, I got, where I started strong, but then it kind of went sour towards the end. But like I say, I actually quite like Donna's story. It's interesting as I recap it, because I don't know if I have the buzz of playing it for the first time, and I was almost blind to, liking it more than how good it actually was. But I'm looking back through these chapters with you, and I'm almost waiting for something great to happen still. And I was really buzzing about the end of the game, and maybe it's just a late hitter, but for some reason I thought it was going to happen more so in chapter 4, and I didn't really see that. I don't know what your overall opinions are of the 3 levels. Do you think there's still room for improvement there?
There is. I mean, I suppose the best thing would be to sort of go through each individual chapter. So if I'm starting off with Mina's chapter, I liked the opening. You have like this sort of whole flashback sequence, and then it randomly cuts to Mina and she's confronting Felix's daughter, Wendy. And then the next thing is she's holding up a gun and she like shoots her. And you think, wow, like she's really sort of harboring dark thoughts. And this is obviously in the midst of an interview, which clearly is important to her. And you actually miss the question that they ask. I mean, I know when I played, I asked them to ask it again, and they didn't. And you get all flustered, and you're like, oh, I can answer another one, but that's it. Like that's the interview cut short. And then you leave and you see your boss, Hale, I think his name is, talking to Amy. And again, you get one of those situations where, like, you can't, you are shoehorned into a corner again in terms of how you act with Amy, because you end up confronting her and you end up essentially saying, I'm all in for this. Don't act like my friend. We're best of enemies because we're going for the same job. And you're like, oh, wow, okay. Like you start to sort of side with Amy more and more in this, which is weird because like you're playing as like the protagonist, Mina, and she's just being mean. Sorry. So yeah, and then you end up going to Felix's to basically ask him, look, about this note. Wendy's the only one that knows about it, so it's obviously her. He gets offended, slams the door in your face, and then you bring that sort of negative energy home, which, obviously Dan's already pissed at you because you haven't texted him to say that you'd be late. And he's, like their relationship at this point has spiraled bad into sort of, domestic violence concerns, because she actually just launches a bottle at him, it smashes over him, and then I suppose this is where it gets a bit unrealistic. He then just like wanders off to bed, and you're like fuck, like if that was sort of in real life, there'd be sort of serious repercussions for that. And then it just cuts to black. And that's sort of like after, what was it, like 5-7 minutes, and you think, oh wow, like again there's sort of room to go into there, which is a shame because they have set up a lot of things in Mina's story that I think that there's lost potential here, if I'm being honest. I don't know if you felt the same way, because well, obviously you think that Mina's is the worst, right?
Yeah, definitely. So like you say, you've pretty much got 3 scenes there, and you complete it within 7 minutes, so roughly just over 2 minutes a scene, and that's just very short. If I remember right, she gets a lot more in episode 5, and I feel like maybe you could have brought that in a bit into episode 4, maybe. I don't know if that would work or not. Or you can just add additional scenes. Like, we haven't seen the father since episode 2. You could add stuff with him in, whether it's stuff to do with the drug dealer Spider again. I'm not sure, but yeah, felt very short. Yeah, I don't want to comment on, to be honest, because the interview kind of just happens. There's not much choice. I mean, we know that with this game anyway. But yeah, it just, I guess with Mina's story, she's an absolute low point. Her marriage is in shambles. Doesn't really, like, her kid obviously prefers her dad. Your career might be in jeopardy because you're losing out to this, new young blood. And yeah, the affair you've had is been exposed. So what do you make of the fact that she straight away accuses Wendy? Because in the last episode, I mentioned to you that, Wendy's a possibility. Now, it's like one of those crime shows where the suspect you think, The moment they mention it in the TV show, you possibly think to yourself, well, it can't be them because the TV show are mentioning them, so it can't be Wendy, surely. That's the initial thought I had with the game. Because you named a few other suspects from, the husband himself to Felix getting back at her. Do you have any different thoughts about who possibly left the note then?
I hope it isn't Wendy. I've got to admit, as soon as I saw that scene, because it's literally the opening scene, isn't it, where she's sort of thinking, oh, it's got to be Wendy. Obviously, I remember what you said about, don't forget Wendy as well. Yeah. I was thinking, is that Liam nudging me in the direction of Wendy?
Yeah.
Or is it, a red herring? All I'll say is this: it would not surprise me in this game if it was Wendy that wrote the note. I sincerely hope it's not. Like I say, I completely forgot about her. I sort of had other suspects in mind. For all we know, it could be. There was one as we was playing. I completely forgot. It could be Amy. Like she's like being all your friend and stuff, but she could be the one that she really is playing a game, and she's trying to like make your life outside of work absolute hell, so that you perform badly in the interview, and she doesn't get the job. So could well be Amy if you thrown another name in the ring. But yeah, I hope it's not Wendy, because that would be a bit of a bum note and it would fall a bit flat.
Yeah, Amy definitely is a suspect because, she is your competition for this job, so it makes sense to throw her in the hat. I will talk. I think you find out who it is in the next episode, and what I will do is I will keep my mouth shut about what my thoughts were until that comes. So yeah, we'll see at that bit. Yeah, so a very almost underwhelming. It's not how bad the quality was, it's just how robbed of time I felt that one was. Like I say, 33 minutes. Mina only gets 7 minutes of that. It's not much at all. So, hopefully it steps up for episode 5. Like, obviously I know what happens, but, in your opinion there. So, did you want to move on to, I assume you played Donna afterwards?
I did, yeah. So again, yeah, there's actually a scene, and I was wondering if they were sort of almost trying to sort of put a strand through the characters here, but she was having a dream or thoughts. I assumed it to be a dream, and a stranger is like stood over her bed, and then she ends up waking up and he's not there. And I thought, because I'd literally just played a scene where Mina was harbouring dark thoughts, I was like, are they slowly trying to connect the characters now? Is there like something going on with each of their minds or something like that? But that's something that I suppose we can find out at a later point, or whether it was just coincidence. But yeah, you text not Vicky, Becky, and actually got an achievement at this bit, and it was one that sometimes I do look at the achievements beforehand, and this one I actually didn't. But you're just walking with her, and you get an opportunity to tell her straight, like that you'd kissed Vivek, and she's like, oh no, that's bullshit, and that she doesn't believe you. But an achievement popped, and then you like run into Wendy and her friend, and they both come across. It's almost like bullies in a way. Like they're certainly not nice to you.
Just to intervene there, did you notice who they were, or at least one of the two?
So there was it was Wendy. Yeah, it was Wendy and Mary, wasn't it?
Yeah, and Wendy obviously being Felix's sister.
Felix's, yeah. So yeah, as you mentioned before, there are sort of story strands, starting to come together, and they're becoming like a lot more obvious now, which I do like, because it helps build the world up a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I did like it because obviously when you see Wendy for the first time, she is in the kind of dark red school uniform that Donna and her friends group wear. So it did make me wonder, okay, she obviously goes to the same school. I wonder if we'll even see that And obviously we do this episode, and I don't know, I really like that. Like, obviously there's going to be another one later that we'll probably talk about when we get to John in his chapter as well. But we've seen it a few times, that Dan in Mina's story being the school teacher. I don't know whether it's Amy from Mina's story being Jack's friend, in the park where they jog together. I'm a big fan of this characters, side characters hopping into different chapters. I don't know why. Like you say, it builds up the world together, brings a bit of unison. It's nice when you can play the game and point it out. But yeah, sorry, I'll let you crack on there with that.
Yeah, but actually, as a quick tangent point on this episode, it's like the ultimate nitpicking ever. But when it says like previously in Last Stop, and it like showed the scene of Donna and Vivek kissing, and I only remembered it because when you finish texting Becky, the next episode you're back to the wardrobe again. And
Oh yeah.
I was looking at the clothes, and it was like a green blazer, like there was a stripy yellow top, and there was like something else. And I sat there and I was like, hang on a minute, I was wearing the yellow stripy top in the previous episode, yet in the previously in Last Stop, I had the green blazer on. So it was like a bit of sort of inconsistency there with the choices. I mean, that's ultimate nitpicking, I know, but it was just something funny that I noticed.
Yeah, but funnily enough, actually, I remember Telltale The Walking Dead game in season 1. When you're playing you can rob that car, can't you? And that can determine whether Clementine gets a different hoodie or not.
Oh yeah.
And I'm pretty sure the next time or the previously, it actually shows the correct outfit that you had on. So, like, games can do it where they can alter the attire that you had previously. So yeah, like, that's a really good nitpick you found there, but it almost feels like something they could have easily polished or, fixed.
Yeah, and it sort of adds to this whole narrative that we've got with this game at the moment, that it feels a bit rushed, a bit underwhelming. It's not polished at all in terms of its storytelling, and as far as the choices go, certainly. Yeah, so like after you run into them two, you end up seeing the stranger talking to, or sort of walking with Vivek. And my initial thought was, wow, are they like somehow in league together? But then bang, no, straight away, it's quite clear that Vivek is in some sort of trance, and the stranger's walking him in, and then you see like the green light round the door, and he's got the green eyes again. And from what I'm guessing at the minute, it seems that the stranger's incredibly jealous with anyone that Donna's remotely close with. Obviously, actually sort of talked to Ash about various things. Ash has been, casually dealt with. He now knows about her kissing Vivek, and now he's been dealt with. So, I don't know. The whole relative idea that I had going forward is becoming less and less likely. So I don't know how that goes, but yeah, a nice little detail. It was like door 13, obviously, sort of like unlucky 13, sort of whole number association there, and then it cuts to what's the most, I suppose, explicit thing yet, as well as Ash's phone, is that you have the Cod father and son's fish shop, and the and son's just sort of slips away and disappears, hence giving the idea that Vivek has sort of been wiped from memory. And even the characters do this, because when they get to the door, they don't sort of know why they're there, and they end up carrying on walking. But yeah, and then I think after this bit, there's this sort of like sequence where it's like a bird's eye sort of camera view, which is just a nice touch, something a bit different. And Becky and Donna like being like really catty to one another, which is like really funny. And I suppose at this point, like maybe because of the whole Vivek thing, and they're really not best friends at this point. Like Becky even says that I don't even know why I hang out with you. So it's sort of it's got really bad at this point. They ultimately end up going back to the stranger who sat there. But at this point, as a viewer, we know that he can't move, or no, he can move. And you go down to the basement. But this is a bit I wanted to ask you about. So, what did you think? You know, when you go into the basement, you've got the light. It's quite clear that the stranger is like coming up behind you or something, and he sees that you've got a picture of him. What were you thinking at that point? Because it looks like he was about to attack her, but he doesn't. He then backs away, doesn't he? Once he sees that.
Yeah, so at the time I was dead confused and thought nothing of it. But I think it's one of those ones where you play episode 5 and you look back at it with hindsight, like, oh, okay, I get what was going on there. So, yeah, I'll put a pin in that comment for the moment, mate. But yeah, I think at the time I was very confused. So for someone like yourself who's just finished episode 4 and you don't know what's around the corner, I can imagine that's probably like, you know, a bit of a weird one to kind of try and wrap your head around what's just happened there.
Because the only thing I can possibly think of is that if he attacks Donna, Donna's met him, so if she goes out of existence, what would happen to him? That's the only thing that I can get my head round. But then another part of me saying, well, why would he go after in the first place? So yeah, it's a bit confusing. And if it is a relative, say if it is like her dad, and he's, you know, just a little bit mind fucked because of whatever the, you know, alien thing is that's got into his head. Again, if he does something to Donna, then, you know, it might impact him, it might impact the family, you don't know. So yeah, a little bit of a puzzler that I'll have to sort of think on it before I play chapter 5 to see if I can come up with anything better than that.
Yeah, definitely. So I get with the whole Stranger erasing characters from people's minds, being quite an original game, they can probably invent the science behind it, what works, what doesn't work, because it's clearly something to do with magic. So with that, you can be really flexible with the rules of what the Stranger can do. But there are elements of it that I do find a little confusing. For example, if Donna noticed the Stranger and Vivek, and then you know, Vivek's been wiped, but she sort of, does that mean she only remembers the Stranger walking towards the door? And also Vivek's the one that introduced the girls to the Stranger as well, you know, to stalk them for the first time in episode 1. You know, so there's questions like what happens to their first memories of the Stranger. So yeah, there is a bit of an odd one there. Also things like Donna and Becky now hanging out, because they were obviously in a love triangle together, and I do find it interesting where one of them gets removed from the memory, and then where does that leave Donna and Becky? What is the memory of their friendship? I think it explains it as well, but Ash's phone gets erased, but you know, like in episode 2, but I actually wonder what happens with all the photos Donna has with Vivek in them as well. So there are a few you know, questions and stuff. Also, yeah, I like your point about the bird's eye view. That's quite different. It's nice to see that because, like we say, it almost does feel like the Donna and Mina stories get a little bit more neglected than the John ones. Like I say, they get a lot less, you know, mini games as well. The writing quality is arguably worse as well. But the last point I wanted to mention on with Donna's story is that your theory about the Stranger possibly being Becky's dad. Now, I find that very interesting, and it also would be a very good explanation to why he's erasing everyone that gets close to Becky. Almost like a really protective parent who doesn't want Ash giving her advice or caring for her, that doesn't want Vivek, you know, kissing or doing the deed with Donna, for example. So yeah, that's definitely interesting, and I never thought of that one initially, but I wonder if I should have actually, because yeah, it's definitely a very viable, you know, thought.
Yeah, because it certainly is strange that anyone that gets close to her, like, he's very sort of possessive, like even down to the fact that he only talks to her. And the fact that even at the beginning, like you're sort of giving the impression that he's hostile, but you know, it looked like he was going to save you from, you know, when you trip over and you're caught up in whatever it was, it looks like that he's going to help you. So then Becky that then whacks him over the head, and you find yourself in the situation that you're in now. So there could be just a twist that he's actually not an enemy. He's actually a friend, hence the sort of the title friend or foe. So yeah, we'll just have to see where that one plays out. But obviously the end of the episode, the cliffhanger being that you return home and you get a phone call and it's the hospital and they're basically saying, your mum is unwell, it's very serious, we need you to come to the hospital now. And I think at this point, this could be like, again, me overthinking things, but it's something that it touches on in John's chapter. But like the mum's unwell in this one, and then even like John, he has like a heart problem in his story. And I don't know, maybe like obviously like the dad in Mina's story, I think did he have like mental problems, or like that's why he's taking the drugs. I don't know if there's like some other thread that's going on in the background here. It could just be trying to give depth to characters. It could simply be that. But it's something that I've noticed playing in the last round of this game. Yeah, a good cliffhanger to end on, and I think that the episode has gone up a notch again now. Donna's won, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Yeah, I'm happy to go to John if you are, mate.
Yeah, definitely. I love this. Like this was the best chapter that I've played so far in the entire game, and it's purely down to the humour. Purely down to the humour. Also, it's got like Britishness things in there that we talked about. So they talk at the beginning like, who are we going to go to get help? And like one of the characters says, "Oh, why don't we go to the doctor?" And like John in Jack's body goes, "I don't think the NHS is equipped to deal with body swapping," sort of thing. It's just a nice line. Like obviously, like if you're from Britain, like you'll know about the NHS. It's sort of like a thing that we're very sort of proud of and protective of.
Yeah, it appears in the news quite a lot for us as well. It's just a very common theme and topic, isn't it? That you wouldn't really get in any other place.
Yeah, and obviously, as good as it is, like it just sort of emphasizes the absurdity of the story, like in terms of like body swapping, But I thought it was just a nice little line to again engage people that that are Brits and sort of know what the NHS is. But there's another little bit of humour in that particular scene. It comes from like your favourite side character, Molly. And
oh yeah, is this to do with the history homework or anything?
So what she says is, "What's fornication?"
Oh
and,
yeah,
yeah, and you're sort of there, and it's like, oh, Jack can handle this one, and he's just stood there like, it's and then he sort of like goes off topic sort of thing. It's a nice, like, the trio of characters. Certainly in terms of like how strong their relationships are, very believable at this point. I like the sort of involvement of Molly as well. I think it's just I think it's very well handled, this particular part of the story.
Definitely. I think, like, for example, you mentioned the triangle and how they bounce off each other. I think it's like really good as well because obviously John and Molly probably quite I wouldn't say decaying family, but John at the start is very much struggling to cope with being a single parent, and you obviously got Jack in there who almost helps out now. And then there's this body swap, and I even like the little banter. For example, you get a bit of it in this episode with like the North versus Southern accents. There's things such as Jack obviously being someone who's very concerned about his health, and how he hates being in John's body, whether there's a bit of abuse towards him getting used to it, whether he only wants a certain bit of, cheesecake, or whether they talk about allergies. The writing and the narration is just really strong in this episode, and I think there's a reason it's just head and shoulders above the rest, to be honest. Like, I know I said it was kind of like neck on neck with Donna, but the more I analyze it, the more I think John's story is much better. But yeah, there's a reason Molly's my favorite character. I think everything she says and comes out with is just absolutely golden, and she's definitely just the most adorable character I've seen in like a game for a while. But yeah, I'll let you carry on.
Yeah, so it then moves on to them going round to various people to try and get help. And this is another moment where we see stories crossing over one another, because it turns out that Felix is a doctor, the guy that's having an affair with Mina, or was having an affair with Mina. And again, it sort of throws up nice little moments where you're sort of trying to explain. I mean, when I was playing, I just outright said, what was going on, and he sort of comes back and he says, "Oh, do you mean in terms of lack of control or dissociation?" And it ends up coming to nothing. But coming back to humour again, it's the next bit that made me laugh. So you go, you go to the therapist, and you could almost honestly imagine this in like a British sitcom. So you go to this therapist and you sit down, you're expecting like this like big scene to play out, sort of go into, the problem and stuff. And they sit down and she goes, "Oh, just to let you know that for my services, it will cost £250 an hour." Nothing said. It then just cuts to them leaving the building. And I don't know what, that just got me so much. Like, I just thought that was so well done. That I really, and it was at this point I thought this is really strong. Like, I think John's story has sort of become the front runner by some way now, in my opinion. And it even gets built upon. So they then go to another person. It's like some sort of like voodoo guy. It's like, "Oh yeah, guys, I can help you." They're like, "What, really? Like, you know about body swapping and stuff?" And he did say something crucial that I think could have bearance on the plot. He basically says, "Oh, people are talking about these alien portals, underground in London," which again, if you play the prologue, you'll know that there is actually some sort of relevance to that. But then, you then just see like this little microphone like drop into the camera shot from the ceiling, and they're clearly both sat there like, "Oh, for fuck's sake, I know what this is going to be." And then this guy blows off into like this, clearly some sort of radio show, and he's like, "Oh, smash the like button." They obviously find out what's going on, and they realise he's not going to be of any help, and they ultimately leave the room. He turns round and they're gone. But it just keeps coming, and another like British thing then comes in. They're sat at the bus stop and they're like, "Oh, what are we going to do? Like, there's no one to help us." And one of them goes, "I've got an idea." And you go, "What?" And they go, "Pub." And it's just, again, like they've got it down to a T at this point. Like, they really understand their audience, in terms of like sort of Britishness and the way sort of the standard Brit behaves, and then you go to the pub. I can't remember what you talk about per se, but then you then have like this piano sequence, which is like a little fun mini game, and I got an achievement out of that as well. And from there on in, they sort of work out that Jack's run out of money, so he ultimately has to move in with John and Molly, which, to be honest, I thought he already moved in at this point, so that wasn't too much of a thing for me. And then sort of the episode ends there. So I was, for that 15 minutes, that was the strongest segment of the game for me at this point, and I was so glad that came last. because I was like, yeah, you know what, like, I'm buying into this now. I'm buying into this game. So I don't know if you sort of have similar thoughts across like the whole chapter 4 segment, but overall, I think, yeah, John's one has taken out, is sort of ran out in front, and the other two are sort of still steady eddies.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, I think chapter 5 for all of them does step up a little bit because they sort of you get more conclusions and stuff. Whether you'll be, underwhelmed by them, I'm not sure. But yeah, as for John/Jack's chapter there, probably one of the most enjoyable ones yet. So, yeah, when they go into the various places to sort of sort their problem out. Now, one underlying flaw I think I briefly mentioned before, but I will say going into this. It does. I find it very flawed how at no point do they clock on that stranger grabbed both of their wrists and there was this magical shine in the subway. And that one random moment where those two happened to be together and that supernatural thing happened that they never clocked on, that could be the problem. It might have been that stranger that did that. But I get, like, the story has to happen, so I almost, will give them a get out of jail free card there for that. But yeah, the scenes were very fun. The first one quite serious, but like you say, it's just nice to see Felix, like, because we never actually see what he does for his career, so it's just nice that it's brought to our attention that way. The second one, it's one of my favorite moments of the game, where, like you mentioned, she mentions the price and they just cut out. I think that's very British writing. With obviously us Brits are very proud of like our writing, and I think it shows that with sometimes no words are needed to show the impact of it. Sometimes less says more, and the fact that there's no reaction, it's just them walking out and reacting, or like behind her back in a very British nature as well. Is I just found that really terrific. And yeah, the third one, the hooked on a healing with Ron. Yeah, like you say, quite big that one because he mentions the portals which are in the prologue. So although he appears as this wacky, crazy guy, he almost does have some relevant points that he mentions there. And when the microphone comes down, yeah, absolute funny scene as well. And it almost wonders that would be what we'd do if we was to get a guest on this podcast. That's how we'd rope them into it. But yeah,
just dangle a microphone in front of them. Yeah,
yeah. Invite them in, and yeah, just that's how it's done. But yeah, brilliant. So I think that was definitely the strong point of it. It definitely ends a little weaker, like you say. He moves in. Not only is he kind of staying there most of the time anyway, so there's not much of a punchline. But yeah, it kind of just ends there. But I think they also mention that in the next episode you're going to try and get your old job back. So you're almost applying for their old jobs in their new bodies, I guess. So yeah, that should be an interesting scene for you because you go back to the civil office place in a new body, so you get to talk to your boss again, who you're not a fan of. Clive, I believe his name is.
Oh yeah.
And there's a brilliant football reference as well, which I can't wait for you to find out, which should be fun for you. But yeah, that episode, it might actually be John's strongest one yet. And we talk a lot about how that one gets the most attention. And I think it's definitely shown by the different mini games. For example, it's got the British writing and the cuts we saw. It had the little history homework quiz at the start, which, a little bit of fun there.
Yeah.
And also just the music scene. I don't know if you thought it felt out of place or anything, but, it's just nice to change the pace up a little bit. It's a nice feel-good moment, especially as John and Jack are talking a lot about, for example, things like the mother, their accents, and this is the episode where I truly feel the two main characters in this story are bonding together. And it just felt kind of nice to see, to be honest. And you don't really get that with Mina and Donna. I know they're more isolated. They don't exactly have to go through a body swap, which is naturally going to be an experience. But yeah, I don't know. It doesn't quite have that character depth and exploration that this chapter does compared to the other ones. But yeah, so yeah, tell us about that music scene. So did you feel that was out of place, Jack, or did you enjoy it?
I did enjoy it. It was just a random bit of fun. I think this chapter, I think its purpose is to be more humour and feel good based. But even like there are occasional moments where it has the potential to drift into something a bit more dark and serious, but they always quickly throw that out the window and offer you a bit of light material. Because I do look at Donna and Mina's chapter, and Mina's one, she's very isolated, isn't she? She isn't very pally with her boss per se. Clearly not with Amy. She has the altercation with the drug dealer. She's got problems with her husband and son. She's very isolated, so you can't see chemistry between her and somebody else. Obviously, you see her, Punk Felix a couple of times, but there's nothing really much to that. And then Donna's one as well. Like, you have that brief moment with Vivek, but again, she's sort of alienated from her family a little bit. Emma's always having a go. The mum's unwell. Becky's not necessarily the best friend going. So you need to balance that out a little bit. And I think that's what John's chapter does. The whole body swap thing, it really invites comedy. It invites silly situations for them to have to negotiate. And that's why it's definitely my favourite at this point.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think another big thing as well that the reason I say Mina might have the weaker of the three stories is because I feel it almost lacks a core. So John and Jack, you've got the body swap, which is just the relevant theme, and it's hard to steer away from that. Donna, as better as they could do with it, your underlying theme is obviously this stranger and the magic he possesses and him erasing people from your life. Mina, it's really difficult to see. She obviously, deals with, struggles with balancing all these plates in her life, whether, it's her relationship, her career, sorting her father out. She doesn't really have a main core the way the other two characters do. And it does come more to life later, but I think her story does almost fall flat in the first 4 chapters because of this, because of her core coming to vision a lot later than the others, and I think it really harms, her story. And I don't know if you sort of feel similar to that.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, I quite like the various strands that she has in hers. You could almost imagine her story being a single story by itself and being its own game, even to the point of a TV series, because like you've got these various things going on: the affair, the drug dealer, the relationship with her husband and son. There's all these sort of things going on. Obviously the job as well, but yeah, rather than enhance her character development and enhance the plot, like you say, it seems to its lack of core sort of drive or core sort of purposes, what the story we're being told is, it takes away from it, instead of enhancing it. So I do get what you mean, and it's almost like the momentum has, as soon as there's moment for momentum to build, it's cut short. Like I said in the previous episode, the affair just randomly stops. Nothing has happened with the drug dealer, and that was in chapter 2. So that there's these things that really could have been thrown in there, and especially like the length of time. What was it, like 5 minutes? This one, you could have had the drug dealer in there again. You could have had the dad in there again. It's, for me, like Mina's story, it's such a shame because I think it'd have been so good. It's just a missed opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. I think character-wise as well, it almost just reminds me of if Lara Croft quit being an archaeologist and she moved to London 10 years later, and this is like Lara Croft trying to survive in London. Like, that's literally what it reminds me of.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know what you mean, and I'm really holding my tongue because episode 5 is around the corner, and then you've got the big conclusion. So I don't have too much to add myself because I really want to dwell into it, in the next chapter. But yeah, like I totally agree with you though. John's got the stronger story, definitely the most attention. Donna and Mina has a lot more room to improve with, and hopefully it does pick up. And like I say, it will just be really interesting to see what you think, because chapter 5, I think it has a lot more, content inside it. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what you think of those. Yeah, do you have any additional points, mate?
Just to touch on what you just said, I hope that chapter 5 goes back to chapters 1 and 2 in terms of length. I hope that it's an hour, in total, 20 minutes per character, so that we can get a bit more before, going into the finale.
So yeah, obviously we'll have to see what happens in the next chapter, which we'll record soon. So on that note, just as always, guys, if you're really enjoying this Last Stop chapter, let us know what you thought about it in the comments. And also, I keep bringing up the Britishness point. I honestly really want to know, if you're from America or Australia or wherever that's not the UK, please let me know what you think of this game, because I'm playing it and I'm loving the relatability, if that's even a word, from a British point of view. And I am really intrigued to think what like an American would think of this game, because of all like the different references and the British humor that's chucked inside of it. But yeah, like like and subscribe if you're enjoying the content. Let us know what games you want us to cover. Jack, anything to add to that?
No, absolutely not. No, all done from me.
Okay, brilliant. Well, we'll see you guys in the 5th one. We hope you're enjoying this. But yeah, thank you very much.
Yep, take care. See you later.
All right, and welcome back to another episode of
The Butterfly Effect Podcast.
Brought to you by Harvey's Razors, the closest killer shaver man can get. Now, before we get into today's topic, remember to share this video with your friends and smash that like button.